The day Will Smith proved that being a hero goes far beyond the big screen. Hey everyone, if you thought you knew all sides of Will Smith, get ready to be amazed by what you're about to see. A real story that will make you rethink everything about celebrities. Leave your like, hit the bell and subscribe to the channel because this story will move you from beginning to end. The sun was setting over the Los Angeles skyline, painting the sky with shades of orange and red, as Will Smith drove his convertible through the city. It was one of those rare afternoons when the actor managed to get a moment to himself, away from the cameras, scripts, and commitments. The warm summer breeze caressed his face as he enjoyed this small moment of peace. Will had just left a meeting with producers about his next project. The meeting had been productive, but it had left him mentally exhausted. He decided to take a detour through a less glamorous neighborhood of Los Angeles to clear his mind before heading home. He wanted to feel the real city, away from the glamour of Beverly Hills and the mansions of Bel Air. As he turned onto a narrow street in the Crenshaw district, Will slowed down. That neighborhood brought back memories of his own childhood in Philadelphia. The same cracked sidewalks, colorful graffiti on walls, kids playing basketball on makeshift courts. It was a constant reminder of his roots, of who he was before fame. It was then that his eyes caught an unusual movement. About 50 yards ahead, a small crowd was forming in a circle. At first, he thought it was just young people gathered for some street dance performance, something he deeply admired and respected. But as he got closer, he realized the energy was different. Heavier, more tense. "Hit him! Hit him!" Someone from the crowd shouted. Will quickly parked his car and, instinctively, walked toward the commotion. As he approached, he saw what was really happening. A fight. Not just any fight, but a clearly unfair situation. 5 young men, probably around 18 years old, surrounding a smaller boy who couldn't have been more than 16. The surrounded youth had a look of pure terror. His lip was already bleeding, and he clutched his backpack against his chest like a shield. The crowd around them, mostly teenagers, was filming with their phones, some laughing, others yelling encouragement for the violence to continue. "Give up the backpack, loser!" demanded one of the aggressors, shoving the boy. Will Smith felt something ignite inside him. It wasn't anger, although there was indignation. It was a deep sense of responsibility, something that went beyond the public figure he was. At that moment, he wasn't the Hollywood star. He was just a man facing an injustice. For a brief moment, he remembered what his father had taught him years ago, on a starry night in Philadelphia. Your true character isn't measured by what you do when everyone is watching, but by the choices you make when no one is looking. The irony didn't escape him, and now, on an ordinary street in Los Angeles, with no one expecting him to be there, he had the opportunity to put that lesson into practice. Adrenaline rushed through his veins, not from danger, but from the certainty that this was one of those defining moments, invisible to the world, but that shape who we really are. Time seemed to have slowed down as Will observed the scene. He saw in the aggressor's eyes the same emptiness he had witnessed so many times before, young people seeking power in the only way they knew how, through intimidation and violence. But he also saw possibilities, alternative futures that perhaps they themselves couldn't imagine. It was this vision, this ability to see beyond the present moment, that propelled him forward now. Without hesitation, Will moved into the center of the commotion. His imposing presence was immediately noticed. The young men, however, were so focused on their victim that they didn't immediately recognize who had entered the circle. "Hey, let's all take a step back and breathe," said Will in a calm but firm voice, positioning himself between the cornered youth and his aggressors. It was then that the looks began to change. First came surprise, then disbelief, followed by recognition. Whispers of "Is that Will Smith?" began to spread through the crowd. Phones that had been filming the fight were now exclusively focused on the actor. "Dude, is that really Will Smith?" asked one of the aggressors, his tone shifting from hostility to surprise. Will could have used this moment of recognition to simply diffuse the situation. A photo here, an autograph there, and everyone would go home. But he knew the real problem wouldn't be solved. That wasn't the way. "Yes, it's me," he replied calmly. "But I'm not here as an actor right now. I'm here as someone who's been in this young man's place, and I've also been in your place. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Will turned briefly to the cornered youth, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked. The boy, still trembling, just nodded, unable to articulate words in the face of the surreal situation. Will then turned his attention to the 5 aggressors, who now seemed displaced and confused. Their young faces oscillated between their previous hostility and a new uncertainty. "Can I talk to you guys? Just for 5 minutes. After that, you decide what you want to do," Will proposed. The young men looked at each other, hesitant. Finally, one of them, apparently the leader, shrugged. "Okay, 5 minutes." Will Smith looked around. The crowd had grown considerably. People were coming out of nearby shops. Drivers were stopping their cars. Everyone wanted to witness this unusual moment. "Let's go over there," said Will, pointing to a small park across the street, a slightly more private place. The group moved, including the young man who had been the target of the aggression. Will stayed close to him, ensuring his safety. When they reached the park, they sat on a set of concrete benches worn by time. "What's your name?" Will asked the assaulted youth. "Michael," he replied, his voice still shaky. "Michael," repeated Will. "Do you want to tell us what happened?" The boy looked nervously at his aggressors, hesitant. They wanted my backpack. My laptop's in there. My mom saved for a year to give it to me, so I could study programming." Will nodded, understanding, and then turned to the other young men. "And you guys? What are your names?" One by one, reluctantly, they introduced themselves: Jamal, DeAndre, Marcus, Kevin, and Tyler. "Look, I'm not going to stand here talking like a boring dad or teacher," Will began. "But I want to tell you something. When I was about your age, growing up in Philadelphia, I almost joined a gang too." This revelation immediately captured the young men's attention. The image of Will Smith, the Hollywood star, the successful rapper, the example of overcoming obstacles, almost joining a gang, seemed inconceivable. "It's true," he continued. "I lived surrounded by violence, drugs, people who solved everything with force. It seemed like the only possible path for someone like me. And you know what saved me?" They looked at him, genuinely curious. "A guy from the neighborhood, DJ Jazzy Jeff. He saw something in me that I didn't even see myself. A talent, a possibility. He showed me another path: music. And that changed everything." Will paused, looking directly at each of the young men. "You know what I saw when I arrived here today? I saw talent. I saw potential. I saw future actors, musicians, engineers, doctors. What I didn't see were criminals." Jamal, the apparent leader of the group, crossed his arms defensively. "You don't know anything about our lives, man. It's not that easy." "You're right," agreed Will, surprising the young man. "I don't know anything about your specific lives, but I do know what it's like to grow up without money, without opportunities, feeling like the world has already decided who you're going to be before you even have a chance to find out." He pointed to Michael, who was still firmly holding his backpack. "This guy here with his laptop is trying to build something. He's trying to escape the same cycle that maybe you're stuck in. The question is, do you want to be the force that pulls him down or the force that helps him rise?" The 5 young men fell silent, processing the words. For the first time, they seemed to really reflect, as if a window had been opened in a room that had been closed for a long time. "I could call the police right now," continued Will. "I'm sure half the people on that sidewalk are already filming everything to put on social media. But I don't think that would solve the real problem." Will then did something unexpected. He took his wallet from his pocket, removed all the cards and documents, stored them in another pocket, and then extended the wallet to the young men. "There's about $200 in there. You can take it." The young men looked at the extended wallet, confused. "Is this some kind of trap?" asked DeAndre, suspicious. "No, it's a choice," replied Will. "You can take this money now, split it between you. That's $40 each. What will you buy? A new pair of sneakers? Fast food? Something that will last a few hours or days." Will then put away the wallet and took out a business card, extending it to Jamal. Or you can take this card. It's from a friend of mine who runs a mentorship and professional training program here in LA. He owes me a few favors. If you call him today, mentioning my name, he'll guarantee a spot for each of you." The young men looked at the card as if it were an alien object. "What do they teach there?" asked Kevin, the youngest in the group, with genuine curiosity in his voice. "All sorts of things. Music production, video editing, programming, graphic design. It depends on what you want to learn," replied Will. "The question is, do you prefer $40 now or a chance to earn much more in the future, doing something you really enjoy?" The silence that followed was profound. The young men looked at each other, as if having a silent conversation among themselves. Finally, it was Marcus who spoke, addressing Michael. "Hey, man. Sorry about your lip." Michael, still cautious, just nodded, accepting the apology without words. Jamal, after a few more seconds of reflection, reached out to take the card that Will was still holding. "Do you really think we have a chance?" he asked, with a touch of vulnerability in his normally tough voice. "I'm sure of it," replied Will with conviction. "But you need to be sure too." It was at that moment that something extraordinary happened. Tyler, who had remained completely silent until then, pulled out his own backpack and took out a worn notebook. With hesitation, he handed it to Will. "They're lyrics. I write raps," he said, almost inaudibly. Will took the notebook with reverence, understanding how much that gesture meant. He opened it and read a few lines in silence. His face lit up with a genuine smile. "This is good. Really. You have a gift with words," he said, returning the notebook. "The program I mentioned has a complete studio. You could learn to record, produce." The gleam in Tyler's eyes was unmistakable. A seed had been planted. The group stayed there for another hour, far beyond the 5 minutes initially proposed. We'll listen to their stories about broken families, failed schools, dreams suffocated before they even had a chance to grow. He also shared his own struggles, vulnerabilities, and failures, and not the polished versions from interviews, but the raw truths that rarely reached the public. When they finally stood up to leave, the mood was completely different. There was mutual respect, an understanding that transcended the social and economic barriers that initially separated them. Will exchanged numbers with all of them, including Michael, promising to follow their progress. Before they parted, Jamal, the reluctant leader, extended his hand to Michael. "If you need help with programming at school, I'm good at math," he offered, in a gesture of reconciliation that was worth more than 1,000 formal apologies. When Will Smith finally returned to his car, the crowd that had gathered earlier to watch the fight had dispersed. Some people remained at a distance, still discreetly filming. He knew those images would probably be on social media within minutes. They might become news the next day. The sun had completely set, and the first stars were beginning to dot the dark Los Angeles sky. As he drove back home, Will reflected on how the universe sometimes places us exactly where we need to be. That alternative route, that seemingly random detour, had resulted in an encounter that could change the course of 6 lives. There was something almost mystical about it, as if fate had conspired to create that confluence of people, time, and place. Will wasn't particularly religious, but moments like that made him believe there was some kind of higher order in the apparent chaos of life. Stopping at a red light, Will took his phone and sent a message to his wife. "I'll be a little late. I'll tell you when I get home, but I think I just experienced one of the most important moments of my life." He smiled at the thought that, in a career filled with blockbusters, awards, and applause, it could be the small moment on an ordinary street, without cameras or script, that would remain most vividly in his memory when he looked back at the end of his life. But that didn't matter. What mattered was what had happened in that small park, a moment of genuine human connection. A reminder that beneath the layers of celebrity, status, and power, there was a simple truth. We all need someone who believes in us, especially when we don't believe in ourselves. 2 weeks later, Will Smith received a text message. It was a photo, the 5 young men along with Michael at the training center he had recommended. They were smiling in front of a professional mixing console. The caption read, "First demo recorded. You need to hear this." And on a Sunday afternoon, when no one expected it, Will Smith showed up at the center. No cameras, no press, no announcements on social media. Just a man keeping his promise. Sitting in the small studio, he listened to the music they had created, a raw, honest beat, full of pain and hope in equal measure. Tyler's lyrics told the story of the day their lives changed, when a stranger believed in them enough to show them another path. At the end of the track, there was a moment of silence. Will then stood up, a genuine smile on his face. "This," he said, "is just the beginning." So, what did you think of this incredible story of how Will Smith transformed a violent situation into a life-changing moment? If you were moved like I was, leave your like, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more content that shows the human side of the celebrities we admire so much. Hit the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. See you next time.